The Star of David necklace made a sickening snap as it was torn from Rachel Goldstein's neck. Her son's kippa lay trampled on the ground. 7 attackers, 3 victims, 1 guard. The math seemed impossible, until Corporal Marcus Williams heard a child scream that reminded him of his son. 8 years of perfect stillness shattered in an instant, because protecting the innocent was the first oath he'd ever taken. Before the uniform, before the protocol, before everything. Before we witness how one guard's split-second decision sparked a movement of courage across Westminster Bridge, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Westminster Bridge stretched before them on that Thursday afternoon, its ancient stones bearing witness to centuries of London's history. Corporal Marcus Williams stood at his post near the Palace of Westminster, his scarlet tunic immaculate despite the humid July heat. At 36, he was one of the senior guards, known for his absolutely unbreakable composure. Tourists often tried to make him smile, laugh, or even blink. None had succeeded in 8 years. But today, his trained peripheral vision caught something that made his pulse quicken. The Goldstein family walked hand in hand across the bridge, young David between his parents, his Leicester City football shirt bright blue against the gray stones. The boy was excitedly pointing at Big Ben, chattering about their London vacation in a mix of English and Hebrew. Rachel Goldstein adjusted her modest headscarf while her husband Michael carried their camera, ready to capture their son's first view of Parliament. They looked happy, normal, unaware of the group that had been following them for 3 blocks. Williams had noticed the 7 men earlier, their coordinated movements, the way they communicated with glances, how they'd ignored every tourist attraction while keeping the Jewish family in sight. His combat instincts from 2 tours in Iraq screamed danger, but his position demanded stillness. He was 50 meters away, bound by protocol to remain at his post unless directly threatened or ordered to move. The leader of the group, a muscular man with a shaved head and neck tattoos, made the first move. He bumped into Michael Goldstein, hard enough to send the smaller man stumbling. "Watch where you're going, Jew," he spat, loud enough for the entire bridge to hear. Michael's face went pale. He grabbed David's hand tighter. "Come on, we should go," he whispered to Rachel in Hebrew. But the 7 had already formed a loose circle, cutting off their escape routes. Williams's jaw clenched. His white-gloved hands gripped his rifle tighter. Every fiber of his training told him to hold position. But his mind flashed to his own son, James, just David's age, sleeping safely at home in South London. What if it were James trapped on this bridge? "Nice necklace," another attacker sneered at Rachel, reaching for her Star of David. "Let's see what we have here." Rachel tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. "Please, we don't want trouble. We're just tourists." The leader laughed. "Tourists? Is that what you're calling the occupation now?" Williams watched as pedestrians began to scatter, some pulling out phones to record, others hurrying away. A few looked toward him, clearly expecting the Queen's Guard to do something. But they didn't understand. Abandoning post was grounds for immediate dismissal and court-martial. Then David Goldstein made eye contact with him. The boy's brown eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Williams's face with desperate hope. In that moment, Williams didn't see a stranger's child. He saw his James. He saw every innocent he'd failed to protect in Basra. He saw the very reason he'd taken his oath of service. The sound of Rachel's necklace breaking snapped something inside him. "That's enough!" The leader grabbed David's kippa, yanking it off the boy's head and throwing it to the ground. One of his companions stomped on it, grinding the sacred cloth into the pavement. "Time you people learned your place." David started crying. Not the angry tears of a child denied a toy, but the deep, terrified sobs of someone who understood hatred for the first time. That's when Williams moved. His first steps were so unexpected that tourists gasped. A royal guard abandoning post was like watching a statue come to life. Impossible, unprecedented, wrong. But Williams wasn't thinking about protocol anymore. His rifle remained shouldered as he covered the 50 meters in seconds, his heavy boots thundering against the bridge. "Stand down!" His parade ground voice boomed across Westminster Bridge, carrying every ounce of authority earned through 14 years of military service. The attackers turned, genuinely shocked. The leader recovered first, sneering. "Look, boys, the toy soldier thinks he's a real cop." Williams positioned himself between the attackers and the Goldstein family, his 6'3" frame creating a human shield. "Metropolitan Police are en route. I suggest you disperse immediately." "Or what?" The leader stepped forward, chest puffed out. "You'll stand very still at us?" His crew laughed, emboldened. They'd researched royal guards online. knew they weren't supposed to engage civilians. What they hadn't researched was Williams's background: parachute regiment, Iraq veteran, close combat instructor. "David," Williams said without turning, his voice gentle but commanding, "take your parents and move behind me. Now." The boy, still crying, grabbed his parents' hands. Michael Goldstein found his voice. "Officer, we don't want any trouble." "You're not the trouble, sir," Williams replied, eyes never leaving the 7 men. "These gentlemen were just leaving." The leader's face twisted with rage. "We're not going anywhere, race traitor. Since when do British soldiers protect the enemy?" "Since always," Williams said simply. "It's what separates us from thugs." That's when the first punch came, a wild haymaker from the leader's right hand. Williams had seen it telegraphed from a mile away. He shifted slightly, letting it whistle past his ear, then drove his elbow into the man's solar plexus. The leader dropped, gasping. "6 years of Krav Maga!" Michael Goldstein whispered in amazement. "He's using our own defense techniques." The remaining 6 attackers hesitated. They'd expected an easy target, a Jewish family and a ceremonial guard who wouldn't fight back. They hadn't expected a combat veteran who'd spent years training in the very martial art developed by the Israeli military. "Last chance," Williams said, shifting into a combat stance. "Leave now." Instead, they rushed him all at once. What followed was captured on 17 different mobile phones and would be analyzed in police training videos for years to come. Williams fought with controlled precision, using his rifle as a defensive staff when needed, but never as an offensive weapon. He took hits, a split lip, a black eye forming, but gave worse than he got. One attacker went down with a perfectly executed hip throw. Another crumpled from a knee to the midsection. Williams used their numbers against them, forcing them to get in each other's way, never letting them surround him completely. Behind him, David Goldstein had stopped crying. He watched in awe as the guard who'd stood so still now moved like flowing water, protecting his family against impossible odds. "He's like Captain Britain," David whispered. But 7 against 1, even a trained soldier, wasn't sustainable. Williams was tiring, his ceremonial uniform restricting movement, the heavy bearskin cap thrown off in the melee. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. That's when the miracle happened. "Oh, aye! Leave him alone!" The voice belonged to a construction worker who'd been watching from the bridge. He was joined by 2 colleagues, still in their hard hats and visibility vests. Then, a group of American tourists jumped in, followed by an off-duty police officer who'd been jogging past. Suddenly, it wasn't 7 against 1. It was 7 against a crowd of Londoners and visitors who'd decided enough was enough. The attackers, faced with overwhelming numbers and the sound of approaching sirens, scattered like roaches. 3 were tackled by the construction workers and held for police. The leader, still gasping from Williams's elbow strike, was pinned by the off-duty officer. Williams stood panting, his uniform torn, face bloodied, but unbowed. He turned to check on the Goldsteins. Rachel was crying, clutching David. Michael stood in shock. But David broke free from his mother's arms and ran to Williams, hugging his leg. "You saved us," the boy said simply. Williams knelt, bringing himself to David's eye level. His hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline and the magnitude of what he'd just done. "Are you hurt?" David shook his head, then picked up his trampled kippah from the ground. It was dirty, boot-printed, but whole. "Will you get in trouble? For helping us?" Williams thought about his perfect service record, destroyed. His position, almost certainly forfeit. His pension, probably gone. Then he looked at this brave little boy and his terrified parents, alive and safe because he'd chosen humanity over protocol. "Some things are worth getting in trouble for," he said. Police arrived in force, taking statements, arresting the attackers. The videos were already going viral, #GuardianAngel trending within minutes. But Williams wasn't thinking about social media. He was thinking about the phone call he'd have to make to his wife, explaining why he'd thrown away their stability. An hour later, he sat in the back of a police car, technically under arrest for abandoning his post and engaging in violence while in uniform. Through the window, he saw the Goldsteins giving their statement, David still clutching his recovered kippah. His phone buzzed, a text from his wife. "Saw the news. So proud of you. James says his dad's a real hero now." Major Thompson, his commanding officer, arrived at the station just as Williams was being processed. His face was unreadable. "Corporal Williams," he said formally, "you abandoned your post." "Yes, sir." "You engaged in combat while in ceremonial uniform." "Yes, sir." "You broke 8 years of perfect service." Yes, sir. Thompson's stern expression cracked slightly. You also upheld the highest traditions of military service by protecting innocent civilians from a violent hate crime. The palace has been flooded with calls. The Prime Minister wants to shake your hand. The Chief Rabbi has invited you to Sabbath dinner, and someone started a petition to give you a medal. It has 50,000 signatures already. Williams blinked in surprise. Sir? You're suspended pending investigation, Thompson continued. Standard procedure. But between you and me, Marcus, you did the right thing. We serve the crown, yes, but we also serve humanity. Today, you reminded everyone what that means. The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, the videos reached over 100 million views globally. The Goldstein family gave interviews praising Williams's courage. Military veterans voiced support. Even the royal family issued a carefully worded statement about the importance of protecting all citizens from hate. The 7 attackers were charged with hate crimes, assault, and conspiracy. The leader, identified as part of a known extremist group, faced additional terrorism charges. The construction workers who joined the fight were hailed as heroes. London had shown its true face, diverse, united, unwilling to tolerate hatred. Williams was reinstated with a formal reprimand for abandoning post, but also received a commendation for bravery. An exception to protocol was written specifically for situations involving hate crimes in progress. He became the face of a new training program teaching guards when breaking protocol served a higher duty. But the most meaningful moment came a month later. Williams stood at his post, back in full uniform, when he heard familiar voices. The Goldsteins approached, David wearing a new Leicester City shirt and his cleaned kippah. "We wanted to thank you again," Michael said, "and to give you this." He handed Williams an envelope. Inside was a photo from David's bar mitzvah preparation class, holding a certificate. On the back, in careful handwriting, "To Corporal Williams, who taught me that real heroes don't just stand guard, they stand up. Your friend, David." Williams couldn't break position to respond, but a single tear rolled down his cheek. Rachel noticed and smiled. "We'll be back next summer. David insists on visiting his hero." As they walked away, David turned and gave a perfect salute. Williams, still bound by protocol, couldn't return it, but his eyes said everything. That night, Williams told his son James the story. "Sometimes, Jamie, doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Not often, and never lightly. But when someone needs help, when hatred tries to win, that's when good people must act. Like you did, Dad? Like we all must, son. Guard duty isn't just about protecting buildings, it's about protecting what those buildings stand for: justice, dignity, freedom for all people." The videos kept circulating, sparking discussions about intervention, about when protocol must yield to humanity, about the courage of ordinary people standing against hate. Williams received letters from around the world, Jewish families thanking him, military veterans supporting him, children saying he'd inspired them. But the letter that meant the most came from David Goldstein, 6 months later. "Dear Corporal Williams, I started learning Krav Maga. My instructor says I'm naturally brave. I told him I learned from the best. Thank you for showing me that being different isn't something to hide from, and that there are always good people ready to stand up for what's right. P.S. I still want to be a guard like you when I grow up." Williams kept that letter in his uniform pocket. Every time he stood at his post, feeling it there reminded him why he served. Not just tradition, not just the crown, but the promise that in Britain, hatred would always meet resistance, and the innocent would find protectors. Because sometimes the greatest act of service is knowing when to break ranks and stand for humanity. And sometimes one guard's courage can inspire a bridge full of strangers to become heroes. The math that seemed impossible, 7 against 3, had become 7 against a nation that refused to let hate win. And that's an equation that evil can never balance. What would you have done in Corporal Williams's position? Would you have maintained your post or rushed to help an innocent family under attack? This story forces us to confront difficult questions about duty, protocol, and our responsibility to stand against hate. If Williams's courage inspired you, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good people still exist, people willing to risk everything to protect strangers from hatred. Like this video, if you believe that standing against anti-Semitism and all forms of hate is everyone's responsibility. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of royal guards who prove that true strength sometimes means choosing humanity over regulations. Drop a comment below. Do you think Williams made the right choice? Have you ever witnessed someone standing up against hate? We read every comment and feature the most powerful stories in our community tab. Remember, evil triumphs only when good people do nothing. Today, you saw what happens when good people do something. Stand against hate. Stand for humanity. Stand with those who need protection. See you next week with another incredible story from the gates of British tradition, where sometimes the greatest act of service is knowing when to serve a higher calling.